Welcome to week 6 of Living on the Wire. Our league's look inside how teams are managing the waiver wire. Not much in the way of anecdotes this week, although it is a bit of a later show than normal, just because the wee man had his first session at the Napier Knights American Football Academy. It went really well. It was awesome. It was great seeing them play wide receiver and getting the ball tossed out, and then getting a shot at playing cornerback and chasing down the wide receivers when they're on the defensive end. So I thought it was really good, and made me kind of jealous. Wish it was something that I could have done when I was his age. But anyway, let's get on with it. Living on the wire, and let's have a little look at our big bid boys. And this week, big bid boys, we've got $30 for Jameis Winston for the Patriots. It looks like he's going to be back taking over duties, so it kind of makes sense, but $30 is quite a lot of waiver wire cash just for that one QB bye week, especially because Mac Jones could be back soon as well. Although, if the Patriot fans have anything to do with it, he's not going to be taking that job off of Bailey Zappi anytime soon. So I can kind of see why, but with no one else bidding, surprised actually that Mikey didn't go for a bid to get a quarterback in for his cover. But I suppose Jameis Winston, it's just waiting to see if he's back, and when he is back, if how well he's throwing the ball around. So it'll be interesting to see how that goes. Good luck, Rob. And then to our next one, Rondell Moore for $17. Quite a lot of money, especially with no one else going for him, Alan. But you've also had to let go of a tight end that seemed to be growing into the season as the season went on after coming back from injury right at the start of the season. So, yeah, it's a tricky one, but if you need that wide receiver cover, you need that wide receiver cover. The bye weeks can be relentless. But it'll be interesting to see if somebody brings a bid in for Robert Tonyan for next week. Then we've got a guy's name who I cannot say, so I'm not going to say it, so we're just going to call him G Money. Robin putting in a bid there for G Money. A couple of other bids coming in as well, although a lot lower than hers. And that's a tight end that's looking like seeing a lot of action. He was actually got the most receptions for the Denver Broncos this past week. It's not hugely surprising with just how slow their offense seems to be. So if he's going to be getting more of the ball, then why not? But then with the health issues there at Denver, when their team starts to look fully fit, will he get as much action? Only time will tell, I suppose, but it could be good at least for the next week or two. Moving forward, you always need a good tight end to cover, although tight ends are something that are really hard to come by in this league. And then Keith, the last of our big bid boys, Keith's picked up Tyler Boyd. I had a little look at myself, thought about it. I went a different path. He should be good for about 7-8 points. A great flex option or bye week option for the Smokeheads. So there was another bid in there for him as well, but Keith snapped him up with $15. Then the little bitty boys. So, although actually this top one, still quite a big bid here for Kenyon Drake for $10. There was a few bids coming flying in for him, but it was Ross that's managed to pick him up. And that might look like smart business with the amount of points that he picked up this past week, but that Ravens team still got to get healthy, and when they do, players like Justice Hill might just push him out of the running, and he might find himself just down that depth chart or even back in the practice squad. So probably not one for the long term, but might get you through a bye week, which is kind of what we're all trying to do right about now. Darnell Mooney's finally getting a bit more of the ball, finally getting a bit more action in Chicago as their team starts to improve slightly offensively. I say slightly, they're not exactly setting the world on fire, but at least the ball is coming through the air to Darnell Mooney a bit more than it was at the start of the season. At the start of the season, they said it was going to be his breakout year, that he was going to be the number one receiver there, he was going to see a lot of action. It's not really panned out that way, but it wasn't a very big bid he's had to put down for it. So Stephen will be hoping that he just gets better and better as the next few weeks go on, and definitely good cover for a little flex bye week option in the meantime. And the Tomahawks, Brian, just swapping out tight ends. He's gone from one New Jersey team to the other with Tyler Conklin, who came into the Jets with lots of hype around him coming from the Vikings. They said he was going to be well used and help in coverage there. It's really not sort of manifested that way. And Bellinger has managed to, pick up a lot of the ball at the Giants and is doing well and seems to be improving week on week. And I believe is one of their top options at receiver, because the receiver room there is either injured or just unpopular for whatever reason. And so it's a good thing that they've got him there to throw the ball to. So I can see why Brian has gone for the swap there. And I was surprised to see no one else going in for that bid as well. I thought he might have been a popular one this week. And then last for the little bitty boys, Alan just swapping out defenses. He actually managed to snap the Jets off of me. I went in for the Jets as well, who have surprisingly looked really good at this stage in the season. Have surprisingly looked quite good in defense. A lot of good young rookie players doing really well there and surprising people. And no big loss having to miss out on the Jags defense. And then we got our cheapest chips option. So there was nobody else bidding for these players. They were all easy to pick up for less than $5. The Wildcats, myself, snapping up Robert Woods. He slowly seems to just be improving in that Titans team that also is a team that seems to just be slowly improving. And Tyler Bass is a great kicker and gets a decent amount of points, but I do have a slightly better kicker on my team. Hopefully, fingers crossed, that stays that way. Although it was sad to lose out on a player that did help me with that week 2 win and my only win over Jago. So it'll be interesting to see if he gets snapped up this time next week. And then Andy in the same boat, just swapping out kickers. You need to make sure you've got as many points on your team as possible, so you can't hang on to some of these position players. And Fairbairn comes in, and Matt Gay goes out. And then Downey with the first of the confusing ones that came up today, signing up OBJ. He even put a couple of dollars down there, expecting I think somebody else might have gone for him. There's lots and lots of talk about OBJ, where he's going to end up, where he's going to go. Will he end up back at the Rams? No, he's insulted by their offer. Is he going to end up at the Patriots? No, he's insulted by their offer. Is he going to end up at the Chiefs? Do the Chiefs really need him? They've got quite a lot of options there at wide receiver. It'll just be interesting to see where he does actually end up and how many weeks it takes for him to actually start playing and start scoring points. So that's a long-term deal there for Andy. And then Steven picking up Taylor Heineke, just kind of obsessed with picking up Washington quarterbacks, I guess. Carson Wentz is going to be out for a few weeks, so he brought in Taylor Heineke. Taylor Heineke was pretty solid last season for a backup flex option as QB, so Steve will be hoping that he does the same for him this week in a couple of weeks when Lamar Jackson is out. And again, not much money risked for these players. Then we've got our afterthoughts, our last 3 players. The Sea Snakes have dropped one of their many QBs. And then this is where I noticed is one of the oddities. What's happening, Alan? Alan had quite a few bids gone in, and then the bids ended up not being successful because he already had too many players on his team. I'm assuming that's because one of his earlier attempts to grab a player went through first, and so those ones didn't. Or Alan's just not selected a player to drop or what have you. But yeah, it was quite an odd one. There was a couple of ones that I clicked on, and it's said that Alan's bid hadn't been successful because he didn't have a player to drop. And there was a couple of bids missed out that way. But again, I just assume it's because he'd picked up an earlier option that then dropped the player that he was going to drop for that one, kind of a backup move, which I did not know you could do. So I learned something new today. And then Brian at Tomahawks, in the next odd thing that I noticed, picking up an injured kicker for a pretty poor kicker who's going on his bye week. But that didn't seem any better, having a kicker that's still not going to play. But we'll get back to that one in a minute. And then Gregor picking up Christian Watson, which I thought was an odd one because actually Gregor, I could be mistaken, but you've got quite a lot of wide receivers that now all have the same bye week. So you've not even picked this guy up as a bye week option, really. So unless you're expecting something spectacular to happen at Green Bay with Watson next week, I'm not quite too sure about that one. But I suppose with no money spent and swapping him out for another player that probably isn't going to see too much of the ball, yeah, is what it is, I guess. And then the also rans. This is where I wrapped up today. I think there was a couple of things that came later on in the day, but this is where I wrapped up today. We got Steve picking up Hillard for Smith. Hillard's got a couple of weeks where he scored loads of points, a couple of weeks where he's barely scored anything. He's typical bye week cover. You stick him in your flex when you've got someone else out, and you just hope that he's having one of his good weeks. And then we had a couple of teams just swapping out defenses, picking up the Raiders and dropping the Bears, picking up the Giants and dropping the 49ers. And yeah, that's just picking the best matchups or getting rid of teams that are on their bye weeks. And then finally, right there at the bottom, the Tomahawks try again. They finally get their kicker. After realising that they'd picked up an injured kicker, they brought in Taylor Bertoli. I don't know how you say his name. I can't say that's a name that I've heard. In fact, there was a couple of names this week that I just would rather not have said out loud, so thank you very much for picking up those players. And we're probably going to set a new rule that you're not allowed to pick any players whose names I can't pronounce, because it makes me feel silly. And then finally, on to our awards. And this week we have some new names up on all of our trophies, which is awesome. Our big spender is Rob Breen with our $30 for a new quarterback for covering for bye weeks with Jameis Winston. Hopefully he'll be back and playing well for you soon. Mikey is now saving up with his team flying through every single week. He's not had to spend too much money to keep his ship afloat, and he is now sitting with $93, although he might think about spending some of that on getting a QB for cover for this week. And then finally, the You Tried Award. This one was a bit odd, because Alan did pick up a few new players, but he also seemed to have his name mentioned on 2 or 3 players that he didn't manage to pick up. So not sure if that was an intentional thing. I'm not sure if you're able to have a preference over which one of your bids goes through first. Something I'll need to check out. Maybe this is some shrewd management that Alan's been using all along that I've only just figured out doing this show. But yeah, unlucky Alan if you were unlucky. But then who knows, maybe that was all part of his master plan. But Alan, your master plan's not working, buddy. You might want to change it. Which I know is rich coming from me with my 1 win, but at least it's 1 win more than Alan. Right, folks, as usual, that is a look inside our waiver wire. Sorry for having to put up with my slightly sniffly, nasally sound today, a bit choked up with the cold. And as always, may the fantasy gods be kind, except to Alan. Fuck you, Alan.